This week on the podcast, we welcome Tyler Packanik. Tyler is the recruiting coordinator at Jacksonville State University. In this episode, we talk a lot about base running, and Tyler dives in and gives a rundown on what he teaches his own players from a base running standpoint. We talk about stealing bases, leadoffs, getting back to the bag. We dive really deep in just everything base running. So if you're a coach out there who wants to learn more about base running and how to incorporate that into a practice setting for your team, this is going to be a great episode for you. So hope you enjoy today's episode with Tyler Packanik. We ready for war. Never back down. Give me some more. Tyler, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, this is fun, man. This has been it's been a fun ride, just getting to know you and building that relationship and learning a lot from you. And today I'm going to learn even more because my background is more so on the hitting side than really anything else. And we're going to dig deep into some base running today, and it's just something that I'm foreign to because I didn't do a whole lot of stealing back in my playing days or anything like that. So first off, when you think of like base running, or the first person I think of is like Ricky Henderson. Like obviously that's like the goat of goats. Who do you like to watch when it comes to just running, like just base running in general? Like, is there certain players that you're like, they may not be the fastest, but they know how to run the bases and it helps their team win games, even if it doesn't show up on the stat sheet?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one person that everyone looks to right now is like Volpe, right? He's really good. He's fast. He's quick. But to your point, some of the best base runners that I've coached haven't been the fastest guys that I've coached. A guy that comes to mind is, you know, I had a guy last year who's Logan Walters, was an outfielder, really good, just, had a really good sense for it. And probably one of the slowest on our team. And he just had an act for it, a sense for what the pitcher was doing. He had a sense of his body and where he was, on the field in his leads, stuff like that. And those excite me more than those fast guys that can just go out there and steal a bag, with ease.
But do you think it's something that you have a knack for and just kind of have that instinct for, or do you think it's something that you can teach? Like you mentioned, the player right there that he seemed like he just kind of had a knack for it. I mean, can you teach that, or is that something that you either have it or you don't?
1,000%. No, I definitely think it's something you can teach, right? It's something that takes reps, and it's hard to replicate, steals, leads, stuff like that, because really the only like the most realistic thing you're gonna see or do in a practice setting is in a scrimmage setting. And for guys, from my experience, and they get in a scrimmage setting, they don't want to mess up. So it's like, as a coach, we have to say, hey, it's okay. And some things that I've done to combat that is, hey, today in the scrimmage, if you steal second, you get caught stealing, hey, you're going to go back to first base. Like, I appreciate the aggressiveness. You get one try at it. Hey, if we're trying a vault or a creep and you get picked off, hey, you get one freebie. That's it. I wouldn't recommend that for every scrimmage because you'll make some pitchers pretty mad. But there's days where, hey, we're going to practice this. And it's also good for pitchers because it's like, all right, how can I control the running game when I know they're going to try to run against me? So I think it really kind of kills, two birds with one stone. But those are things like, yes, you can teach, but the guy has to really be bought into it, and they have to know and understand and appreciate what good base running can do for your team and for them.
You mentioned the vault lead there. I think there'd be some people listening may not necessarily know what that means. Like what do you mean when you say vault?
Yeah, so the vault is like a short lead and it's a one hop. It's kind of how I describe it. So how we teach it, we want to get to a 6 foot lead. We call that our new school lead. 6 foot. And basically you're trying to figure out some sort of timing off the pitcher. As coaches, when we're going through scouting reports, that's a big thing for me. I love trying to pick up pitchers. They're creatures of habits, whether they're chin look guys, breath guys, timing, whatever it might be. I'm trying to pick up something that they're consistently doing, or when they're in trouble, they resort back to, because that's something. Yeah, hey, pitcher's cruising, they're feeling good about themselves, they slow the game down. They start to now control the running game. But when things aren't going right, they tend to go back to whatever they're more comfortable with. So for us, it's okay. Hey, he's a chin look guy. We're going to hop here and try to pick up that timing. And I use the analogy of, you're pulling up to a red light and, you see that red light from afar, and you're not just going to speed up and stop yourself. Like, you're going to kind of roll into it, wait for it to turn green, and just keep going, and you're going to be the faster car off of the line.
I like that. I like that analogy right there. So do you give like, is there certain guys that always have the green light to do the volt lead? Is there other guys that you just have to do the traditional approach of just leading off and there's no volt, there's no nothing that they just kind of just traditional? Like, how do you go about telling players what to do, or is everybody just doing the same thing?
Yeah, so when we're teaching, we're introducing it to expand. I guess the coaching cue that everybody loves to use is the toolbox, right? We have three different types of leads, types of steals that we teach in our program, that I'm a big fan of. That, hey, we're going to teach all of our guys, and I break our guys up into green runners, yellow runners, red runners. All three groups are going to learn all three kind of ways to steal. Now, our green runners, most of their steals are going to come off of old school, the traditional get to your 12-foot lead. When you get a good jump, you go. Our yellow runners get most of the time. If we got a guy out there who's, and you don't see it too often in Division One baseball, but a guy that's a 1-4 to the plate, yeah, they could steal, in an old school type of lead. Our red runners, they're probably never going to steal from an old school start. So they're going to have to get more comfortable with a volt and a creep. But even our green runners, hey, if we got a guy who's a 1-0 or a 1-1 to the plate, and you got a good catcher back there, and you can't steal from old school, there's just no way. So that's where, we're still going to, hey, you got to learn how to creep, you got to learn how to volt. And here's, how you do it, just to one, kind of help them expand their toolbox, but also, hey, like, we still want to try to get to scoring position, even when the team is doing a really good job of trying to hold runners and all that good stuff. And we can, especially those green runners, even if the guy's a 1-1 to the plate and we get a time where we time it up perfectly, like, there's still no chance for the pitcher catcher that combo to throw you out if you get a good, vault or good creep timing.
Okay, so here's another a good question to follow up off that. Let's say, because I know you're not a pitching coach, but let's say, knowing what you know about base running, if you're the
Mhm.
pitching coach, what are you telling the pitchers to try to combat what they're doing with the volt lead and the leads in general?
Yeah. So before I get into that, like, what I tell our guys, from the base running standpoint, it's a cat and mouse game. So we're not always like, just because we're hopping over there doesn't mean we're going to vault and try to steal.
Mm.
Like, we're going to try to set it up for maybe later in the game, in the eighth inning or the seventh inning, and we need that base. So we don't just show that short lead. We don't just show kind of moving around. We also, like, I also teach, like, fake hop. So it's pitcher looks at you, it's like a fake hop or a fake jab, for them to try to pick. And I was looking this statistic up the other day in Division One baseball. There was over 77,000 pickoff attempts to first base last year. How many do you think resulted in an out at first base?
77,000 pickoffs at first base.
Yeah, and you can give me
Wow.
a percentage. You can give me a percentage. What
Oh,
percentage
oh,
led to an actual touchdown?
10%? No, 7%.
Now, less than 1% led to an out on the pickoff attempt. How many
Really?
result? What percent led to an error on a pick?
Ooh. An error, like the first baseman missing it, or
First baseman missing, pitcher throwing it away.
I'll go 8%.
It's just over 1%. So most of the time, nothing's happening, right?
I was
But
terrible at that.
there's,
Jeez.
it's all right. There's more of a chance of having an error than actually picking somebody off. So again, for us as base runners, like I'd rather them make an error than us steal a bag too, because now that's two bases versus hey, we steal a bag and it's one. So like I tell our base runners like, man, get the guys to make an error. Like that's what I want over there. So like be moving around. And then it also just creates for our offense more fastballs too, right? When, from a pitching coach standpoint, like you see a guy bounce around, it's going to be that. But to answer your question originally, as a pitching coach, what do I have to do? Um, Again, like knowing, hey, not too many pickoff attempts lead to outs. You have to show a pickoff move. You can't in certain counts you can't be predictable. You can't always pick off early in ABs or late in ABs. You have to, because we get all those numbers now in baseball. Hey, this team likes to pick off when it's a 1-2 count. And as a base running coach, if I see guys 70%, he's gonna not pick off here. He's gonna deliver a pitch. Like that's the time we're gonna take a chance. Or hey, in 2-2 counts, they throw 80% breaking ball. It's a great time to steal in 2-2 count. So you just can't be predictable. And then I think, there's guys that can be really good and be 1-1 to the plate. And then there's pitchers that can't do that. It really just breaks up everything for them. They have those types of pitchers. You have to be really good at quick pitching and long holding and mixing up that timing to allow for, that base runner to not get comfortable out there.
How often would you say you guys practice this on a daily basis? Like, is this something that's every day for a certain block at practice? Like, how often are we talking to you guys are going over this stuff?
Yeah, so base running, we do it every single day. So there's days where we really want to hammer the fundamentals of something or introduce something, and we'll set aside. Usually happens right after our stretch. We'll go into our 15-minute base running segment, and within that 15 minutes, I mentioned those three groups, like our green, yellow, red. We'll break up into our three groups, and each group they might be at a different station and they're working on something different, or they could be working on the same thing, but it's a different station and it's more, hey, that station might be going over stuff that's more specific for them. Or it could just be, hey, like my group at first base, we're working on first base leads. At second base, we might be doing second base leads. Third base, we're doing third base leads. Or one day it might be, hey, everybody's working on first base leads. But you're working specific to your group for 15 minutes. And then days where we might not be getting super fundamental and like we're really starting to dive in, get a feel for it. I mix it in during batting practice. So, you always have your four groups in batting practice. You got a group hitting on the field, you got a cage group, you got a defensive group, you got a base running group. Well, one day, hey, like we need to go over first base, creep. We're going to work on the creep today. So at first base, I take that group, and instead of doing live reads off the bat, like we're going to work on the creep stuff. And then after that, I might let them go take live reads at second, then live reads at third. I can change that up, however, but we can dive into it during batting practice because you get 15 minutes, per group sometimes. And hey, 5 minutes, we're really going to hammer 1B steals, or hey, we're going to we're going to go out to second base when we're 2B steals. There's times within practice where I hate standing around, so we try to maximize as much as we can throughout a practice.
Dude, I can't get over. I love because I've never heard this before, and I've had different people on. We've talked about stealing bases and things like that, but just the faking the pitcher out
Mm-hmm.
when you're on first base, the fakes. I love that. Something
Yep.
I've never thought about before.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you just come up with that on your own, or how? I mean, have you seen that other places? Where did you start? When did you start doing that?
I mean, it's kind of goes back to like, for me, there's guys that can't steal, but they can still be productive base runners and your red runners, your yellow runners, like you can still be productive out there and act like you're doing something and moving around. And I mean, we've all been around games and your infielders are getting mad at the pitcher because he's staring at a runner too long, and you're like, this guy's a big guy, like just pitch, and then all of a sudden, a big guy steals a bag. Like there's so many things within the game that, like I mentioned, like it's a cat and mouse game, to where we might not be stealing, and I know we're not stealing because it's not the right situation. We might be down 2 or 3 runs, but if we can turn the focus on the base runner versus the batter, now we're giving our hitter a better chance. So it's just something that, like, I just love that piece of it. Like we can still be productive out there even if we're not going somewhere.
Pet peeve of mine as a hitter is guy steals less than 2 strikes, you get yelled at for not taking a pitch. Is that something you guys are? Because here's the thing, like from a hitting standpoint, like you're so focused on the pitcher, and then it's like you get a fastball right down the middle, and you yelled at for swinging at it.
It's
What's your
tough for
take
a
on that?
lefty. It's tough for a lefty, right? Because they're
Yeah,
really not. A righty too. Like I don't really care. Like I'm not going to get mad at a hitter
yeah.
if they get a fastball right down the middle. We want them to swing, and probably that might come back to hurt us more times than not because we might line out. But hey, if the hitter puts on a good swing, he puts on a good swing, and we're taking a chance. I'm always going to side on the side of aggression when it comes to base running and offense and applying pressure, stuff like that.
I'm sure you saw Otani get the 50-50 this year, 50 home runs, 50 stolen bases. Or what are your thoughts on them saying that it's not the same now because of how they're viewing stolen bases in the major leagues and things like that?
I think, what was it, a couple of years ago when you still had the shift, stuff like that. The art of stolen base was kind of gone, right? It was, so what? Let's, we don't care about it. Like we want a guy to hit a home run. I think that's totally flipped now with how important it is to get runners back to second base, getting them into scoring position because you can't shift, and now more hits because you can't shift, and now you can score more runs. So I like it. I mean, I like kind of where the game is now on the defensive side of me. It's like, man, I wish we could shift and combat guys getting hits, but it's fun. It's more fun now to watch like guys, and I think it makes pitchers be better. Like you have to be better at holding runners, catchers. They're saying, hey, like we just get guys that can catch and receive, and who cares what their arms like. Now it's like, man, they need a catcher that can actually throw again and stuff like that. So it kind of brings a little bit more of that old school mentality back to where have faster guys that can steal bags and help your team out, like your Ricky Hendersons. And so I like that aspect of it for sure.
Yeah, I was listening to MLB. I was on MLB Network and just watching, and they were kind of like, yeah, it's 50-50. And someone chimed in. It's like, well, it's not the same now with the stolen bases. So I was like, hey, 50 stolen bases isn't the same. I mean, I guess I don't know why they would say that, but maybe it's some analytics department or something like that saying that. I don't know. But 50 stolen bases, that's a lot of stolen bases.
I think in a long major league season, right? People, who cares if they steal a base? But when it comes to postseason baseball, that base really matters, right?
Yeah.
And I tell our guys all the time, in our 56 games, yeah, pitching, hitting's probably gonna lead to more wins and more losses than base running. But sometimes on the hitting and pitching side, you don't really get to control that. Like if a pitcher goes out and has a really good outing, it doesn't matter. Like he had a really good outing, we have to tip our cap. But those 5 games that might be decided by base running, you actually have control of. It's something you can control. So if we can control those 5 wins and turn it to our favor, that could be the difference between, winning the conference tournament and going to a regional or hosting a regional, where the hitting and pitching side, like you could have a really good swing that day and feel really good, but if that pitcher's just absolutely dealing, you have no control over it. And same with a pitcher, like, man, you're feeling really good today, but man, that guy's seeing watermelons up there. It doesn't matter, and he hits one out of the yard. Like sometimes you don't have control of that. The base running piece you always have control of.
I love the watermelons. That's great. I'm gonna steal that one. I'm gonna steal the watermelons too. I love that. You're right. You're 100% right. Something I didn't even think of because as you said, from a hitting standpoint, you can do everything right as a hitter and still not hit. And I
Mhm.
think I'm always looking for different things where hitters that I work with anyway can still feel like they help the team or had success that isn't reliant on an outcome. And so I think base running will can fit into that category where you can be a good base runner, you can help out your team, and like you said, you have control over that. So I think that's a really cool thing that I don't think a lot of people even necessarily think about. One of the things I love about doing this podcast is I come up with questions beforehand, but during the interview, I think of other questions. And so another question that just came to my mind is, and this is something that just brings me right back to the playing days, is like running through first base. Because like one of the things you always hear about is you don't want to lean for the base, you want to run right through it. And I'm very curious to hear, do you care? What are your thoughts? What do you teach?
Yeah, so everything we do in base running is attention to detail, small things. Um, but I have first off, I have two rules to base running. It's your best time every time. And then the second one is you see your foot hit the base. Two very controllable things. So when I think of you see your foot hit the base at first base, if once you hit, you start running, you lock your eyes in on that front part of the base. Your feet are going to align itself to hit the front part. Hitting the front part again through a course of the season might not matter, probably 99.99% of the time, but it could be the difference between being out and safe one time if you hit the front part versus the middle part. And it happens every single year. So hitting the front part of the base is extremely important. Lunging is slower. Again, I go back to track stars. You don't see track stars lunge for the finish line. You see them run through chest out. So that's a big thing for me. And as far as breaking down, like there's an art to breaking down at first base as well. Like for us, it's getting wide. When I start to get wide, I slow down faster. I get on our guys. I jump on our guys. If we break down and the foul line isn't directly underneath me, I'm going to be really mad. Like you better break down and that foul line better be right underneath you because that chance of that ball getting back, past the first baseman, if it does, like you better be to second base. If I veer off a little bit, now I have to go, 93 feet, and that could be the difference between out and safe. Breaking down with you're looking over your right shoulder is really important to find the baseball. Again, that could be the difference between, hey, it gets by and I can go or I don't go. But yeah, there's an art to touching first base and then whether that's running straight through or we're rounding, we're going to hit that left inside corner. Um, and we're going to hit it with our left foot. That's our goal, to hit it with our left foot. So my right leg can push through, get around and create better direction towards second base
Oh, so you want to touch first base with your left foot.
with our left foot. So I can swing that right hip, that right foot around to get me going in a straighter line towards second base. Yeah.
Okay. What about
Yeah.
when you let's say you hit a ball and you're thinking double right out of the gate? When do you teach the runner to start that turn to create that
Yeah.
turn into first base?
Yeah, so I talked about there's three ways to first base. We hit on, hey, there's straight through. There's that ground ball that gets through where I've probably taken three steps. I get to my point, I peak. I know, okay, now it's through. Now I can get to my point. That ball that's off of the bat, it's in the air. We're getting to our point right away. So those are the three different ways to first base for me. And everybody, their point's a little different. I thought, some people say, hey, it's your banana route. For me, everybody's banana is a little different. The big things for me is I don't want to be quick to first. I want to be fast to second now. Part of that's going to be, hey, like hustle doubles are really important. Breaking down at first base after you touch first base is important to me too. Like I want our guys, maybe, it wasn't a double, but it was getting to the outfield and I'm getting, I touched that inside left corner with my left foot. My weight, my chest is going to be over my right foot. And if I see any bobble, I'm just continuing going. If I have my chest over my front foot, he catches it, I can always go back and it's a lot easier. But so many amateur base runners, like they'll hit first base, they get past it, and you'll see like they'll break down, their chest is back. They're in their mind, they're not going to second. And then that outfielder bobbles, and then they try to regroup and they go, and that's when they get thrown out. So for me, like that, the breakdown, not only just running straight through first base is important, but the breakdown as you turn at first base is really important too.
What about home to first times? What are some home to first times that I think you told me before is like you have your own system when it comes to like red, yellow, green. I believe for runners, like what are some good home to first times? I think this would be good for people to know. Everyone's always obsessed with 60-yard times, but the home to first is way more applicable because it's in the game.
Yeah, so straight through anything under 4.25, I think is really quick. It's fast. Between that 4.25, 4.35, I think that's your average Division One base runner.
And you're starting that
There.
right as the ball hits the bat.
Yeah, bat hits, ball hits the bat, their foot hits the base. Um, Anything over a 4.35, I think is a below average runner. For turns, like if you can be under, somewhere around that 4.4 on a turn, like, man, that guy's he's cooking. He's booking a little bit. You get above that 4.5, I think, it's just okay. It's average. Above that 4.6 is slower. I have a rule, like, again, the two base running rule is your best time every time. Anybody runs a 5.0 turn, like for me, they're going to have some punishment after a game, after a scrimmage, or they might be taken out of a game. And we've done that before. When I'm out recruiting, I see over a 5 turn, I'm done. Like that's effort. Like that kid has no effort. See ya, because it's just like that's they don't care about it, and I don't know. I have a hard time teaching the care factor for sure.
What if it's I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but what if you're up at the plate, you hit a line drive right up the middle, like it's going to be it's a single. Are you
Yeah,
still that dogmatic about it?
I would say it's more important. Yeah, like you hit one hard to the outfielders, they're probably outfielders aren't used to catching ground balls. So you have a better chance of probably getting a double off of that if you actually run hard because that guy's going to bobble it. So yeah, like that stuff still matters to me. Like I'm always the 90 feet, and we mentioned like in professional baseball wasn't so important 3, 4 years ago when you had the shift. Now it's even more important because the shift's banned, more hits are happening. That 90 feet is so important to get to second base now. And obviously at the college level, the percentages of your runs and scoring runs go up when you get to second base. Some people say, you're at second base, you're in scoring position, but your chances of scoring a run when you're on third base go up even more now. So those 90 feet matter so much in our game.
Let's talk about getting to third base now. Stealing third base. What are some of the tips you have for coaches out there to teach? Or maybe a better question would be like, how do you go about helping your own hitters and who are running on second base get to third?
Yeah, so we use True Media. A lot of professional baseball organizations use True Media for scouting reports, and I kind of dove into it a little bit. I think it was last year, 2 years ago. The distance at second base doesn't matter at all. So regardless if you get to 17 feet or 20 feet, which is a big difference in base running, right? Your chances of stealing third base are over 83%. So the distance doesn't matter. What matters is momentum at second base. So how we get momentum is what's really important. Pitchers, pitching coaches, they always say, you got to stop their feet, got to stop their feet. Okay, so we don't want to stop our feet regardless. Like if a guy's looking at me, don't care. We're keeping our feet moving. I'm trying to time it up. Again, pitchers are creatures of habits. A lot of pitchers, they tend to give tells. It might be, hey, they like to go one look at second base. They might like to go two look. Or, hey, you got a guy who changes it up. Well, we're going to try to guess a little bit. But the distance to me doesn't matter because that percentage doesn't go up a big enough amount where at first base it does, right? If I get an 11-foot lead, my chances of stealing second base are a lot different than if I get to a 12-foot lead. That 12-foot lead is really important. That percentage goes up almost 3 whole points just from my foot. Second base, it doesn't matter. So the momentum piece is so important at second base of keeping our feet moving. And that technique for me looks a little bit more like a vault. We're kind of hopping into it to go to get kind of our running jump to go.
That's crazy that even that it doesn't matter at second base. The 3 feet, 2 feet, it's not relevant at all. Does that surprise you at all? Did that surprise you when you saw that?
When I dove into it a little bit, I thought, maybe it might be a whole percentage point or 2 percentage points here and there. But then when you start to think about it, it's like, yeah, like if you just time it up, it's sort of like that vault, right? It doesn't matter at first base. We're kind of rolling into it. I'm getting momentum. It's an object in motion stays in motion. So if we can stay in motion at second base and hop into it, yeah, I guess that whole foot, that it doesn't really matter. So
When it comes to like teaching running form, you mentioned sprinting earlier, and obviously they have very good running form and technique. Is that something that you guys focus on or do drills on or anything like that? Or is it kind of like, hey, they're at the college level, like they know how to run at this point?
our strength coach, that's something that I love getting with our strength and conditioning staff and talking about, hey, they can see that better than I can. They're the expert at running technique, running form. But what I highly encourage people is, hey, like strength coaches, they run stretch, every day before guys go into lift, like they're gonna run stretch, they're gonna work some sort of dynamic. Like get with them about incorporating, hey, instead of just going, hey, these last 2 sprints, we're just gonna sprint, like, hey, incorporate the vault because it's a sprint, but now they're actually getting hit with, again, like I'm working on the technique of it of, hey, I want to stand straight up and I want to hop and get into it. Like there's things that they can do that can allow for just more repetition without the players even thinking about, hey, I'm actually doing some sort of base running right now, that they can incorporate into the stretch. And then there's stuff too, like the best strength and conditioning coaches out there for baseball incorporate a lot of those different things that we'll see within the game, like our turns. Like I get with them and I talk about, hey, we're gonna lean when we're making a turn out of base. Like we want to think lean because it's gonna help you get back into a straight line to the next base, and that stuff. Strength and conditioning coaches, they work on turns and cuts and stuff like that, and you'll hear them saying the same verbiage that I'm saying, and vice versa. When I get out there, I want to say the same thing that they're saying, so they're hearing a consistent message.
Head first slide versus feet first. Preference?
Uh, for me, I like it depends on the situation. Obviously, the foot first allows you to bounce up a little bit quicker. For stealing a base, I like the head first, because you can be a little bit more creative on dodging tags, stuff like that. But when maybe you're trying to beat, a throw to a base or something from the outfield, feet first, like it's going to allow you to pop up a little bit quicker if you have to get going to the next base. But for me, I don't really dive into that with players. Besides, if we're stealing a base, I'd like them to go head first.
Do you dive into sliding techniques? Because I think that's something that I feel like a lot of injuries happen sliding in general. I think a part of it is players just don't know how to slide. Is that something you guys work on?
Yeah, we'll talk. We'll incorporate it a little bit into practice. Sometimes during our BP rotations, we'll say, hey, you're going first to third here. You're sliding into third base. We talk about, fingers up. Everybody has a sliding mitt now, so it's like the fingers are a little bit more protected. There's techniques to sliding on turf versus natural too, because we have a turf field. It's super slick when it's rain late at night. So like we talk about the difference on when you need to sliding early versus late, stuff like that. And then also like returning to base. I think that's something I'd say we spend more time on. Pick off and returning to a base, I think is really important. And what that looks like. Because now, yeah, you can avoid a tag if you dive back properly, even if the ball beats you by a little bit.
Yeah, how
And
do you go
just
about
protecting yourself
teaching
on that.
that?
So we'll incorporate, hey, how are you going to return on an old school lead? How are you going to return on a new school lead? How are you going to return when you're in the middle of vaulting and now you got to get back because the guy had a great time on picking back, like what that looks like. We always work our right hand to the back left corner of the base. It's the furthest part away. If we're diving back that way. We're diving back with as much straight body as possible because if I curve, the body tends to curve back towards the first baseman. It's a little quicker to tag for them. So we want to dive back in a straight line to that back corner of the base. I like, especially when we're playing that cat and mouse game. I bet if you watch our games, we tend to come back to first base more standing up than we do diving back because we're playing that cat and mouse game and we're creating a really hard lane for that first baseman to handle a ball up the line. We come back to the middle part of the base with our right foot and we get broad shoulders and we try to make it as hard as possible for that first baseman to reach around. So there's technique on coming back, standing up too. I think that you can incorporate. Now we're trying to create errors. We're trying to create havoc on the other opposing defense. So those little things can help lead to that. Because no first baseman wants to try to reach into the base runner and make a play. So we want to come back big. So those are things that we talk about.
What should a runner on first base be looking for when he's taking his lead when it comes to the pitcher? Like, is there certain cues that a pitcher will give that they're about to pick off? Like, what should they be looking at?
Yeah, so I don't want to give away too many of secrets, but there are I break pitchers down. There's got, the buzzword is balk move, right? A lot of pitchers are taught the balk move, and there's
What's the
things
balk
as a
move?
base where that front leg moves first, and umpires
Okay.
don't call it, though they should, right? So that front leg buckles first, and then they pick. Um, so there's things, we look for in those types of guys. There's things we look for in guys that I call average pickoffs, where they don't necessarily move that front leg first. Lefties are creature of habits. They tend to have a lot of different tells, whether it's their feet, whether it's their hands, whether it's their head. But that's stuff when guys get to first base. I've done my research, I've done our scouting report that, hey, this is what we're looking for. This is what you're looking at. And I know you just came out with an awesome pitch recognition course. I send our guys probably twice, 3 times a year, and I probably should do it more, where I'll break down open side. Well, I guess could be close side if it's a right-handed pitcher. Basically, where I'll show a quick clip, and the guy has to tell me if it's pitch or pick, and it basically will show the video, black out, and now all of a sudden, like, they have to tell me. So they're starting to look and dive into what am I looking for on this guy here, to create, okay, some timing and stuff like that. And then there's stuff, again, a lot of pitchers that I think you've probably heard the UCLA timing
Yep.
before.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah, a lot of, again, pitchers, creature of habits. It might not matter that they do chin looks, but they always pitch on L timing. So it's like, hey, ignore the chin and they pitch on L, So there's things like that that we'll look for. And then there's things at second base you look for too, on guys. Whether it's their head, whether it's grips, hey, guys aren't going to pick off if they're holding a changeup grip. They're not
Yeah.
gonna
No.
they're not gonna pick off
Yeah.
if they're holding a slider grip. So there's things like that you can always really look into and dive into.
That's great stuff. I love the similarities between the blacking out, the pitcher blacking out. You comparing the two different pitchers. I think that's great. I think coaches should definitely look into that and start doing that with their players.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love all
You
that.
always and you always videotape pictures too, like open side. So like in a scrimmage, like videotape your pitcher and put it on iMovie and black it out at their first move and show the team and say, hey, did he pitch or pick here? And now they can start to really dive in and have an idea. Because that was something, as I wasn't a very good base runner either back in the day from a speed standpoint and stealing bags. Like I was good at running hard and getting those extra 90s, but it was mostly because I didn't really know what I was looking for on a pitcher.
Hmm.
I didn't know those little things, and there's things now that I know. I was like, man, like lefties are really easy to tell if they're pitching and picking sometimes. Man, if I only would have known that back in the day, I could have sold all the time.
Yeah, because it was back in the day. I mean, when you were playing like lefties, you were so scared over there. Like you didn't know if they're
Yep.
going to pick or not pick. Or you remember the Andy Pettit days way back in
Hmm.
the day? It was like a great pickoff move.
Yep.
Um, yeah, that's something that I think, to your point, I think that should relieve some stress from some players that they should know what to look for now when lefties on the mound. Are we going to see Jacksonville State steal home a few times this year?
I don't know, maybe. Third base is the easiest one to steal, especially in the college game. College pitchers tend to give you home on pass balls, wild pitches a lot more. That one I don't want to mess up. So it's like, we might not take our chances on stealing home too often, but we like stealing second, stealing third for sure. It's a lot easier to steal third. So I always definitely encourage that for our guys and testing their limits there.
How early should runners be picking up the third base coach when there's a ball hit behind them and they're on
Yeah,
first base?
so picking up the third base coach, it has to happen twice. It has to happen before you touch the base and then also after. I think we saw it.
Before that
It
you touch
was
the base?
so you got to touch it, before you touch the base and then also after, because that decision might change for a base coach. Based off of, man, that guy really got to the ball and he got it in quicker than I thought he would, or man, this might be a stop and I'm stopping him, but all of a sudden the guy drops the ball and now it's like, hey, you got to get going. So that's where I think it's important. We pick him up before, pick him up after. It happened in the big leagues in a postseason game. Um, was it Otani early in the
Yeah,
playoffs with the Dodgers? And Otani picked him up before, didn't pick him up after, and they were trying to hold him at third, and he ran through it and got out at home. Like that's where I think those decisions might change based off of how the defender, fields the ball, how he gets it to the cutoff. So for me, it's you're picking it up before. Ideally, you don't want to pick it up, right before you touch the base. I talk about 2/3 of the way to second base. We're going to pick him up as soon as after you hit the base. We're going to pick him up. Same thing with third. 2/3 of the way to third base, we're going to pick up coach, and then after I touch third base, we're going to pick up coach.
got it. Okay, I got it. Don't want to get in trouble, so that's why I always want to ask the coaches how early they should be picking players up when they're brand. Um, okay, so you've given a ton of information today. I've learned a lot. I mean, this has been great. Um, what should coaches, okay, they got this information now. Like they want to take this, take some of this stuff, they want to apply it. What would be the first step for them? Like what would be you're taking over a high school team, you're running practice for a day at another college and they haven't done any of this stuff. Like what's the first thing? What's the lowest hanging fruit that they should do?
Yeah, I think setting those rules is the first thing, like your
Okay.
best time every time. It doesn't matter. Again, like you break your groups up, you have a green group, yellow group, red group based off of, your runners. Like, hey, this guy at our level, he's a green runner. This guy's a yellow, this guy's a red. You're going to give your best time every time. You're going to see your foot hit the base every single time. Those are really important. They're little things that matter based off of where you hit the base. So we're going to break our groups up and where you are on the field, your space, that stuff. We talk about having an act for base running. That act comes from knowing where you are on the field. We can talk about, hey, you got to get to a 12-foot lead, but if a guy doesn't know where 12 feet are, then it does us no good. So for me, like we've talked about this before, like I make sure our guys take the same type of lead every single time. That helps them figure out what space is on the field. And as a coach, it's easy to get out there and mark what your 12-foot is, or at second base, it's easy to mark, hey, this is where our 17-foot mark is. This we have to get here. If you get to your 20-foot mark, it doesn't matter, but here's where 20 feet is. So incorporating those small little details, I think, can really help. Before unlocking the stolen base, you have to unlock the return piece. Talarico talked about that a lot in his course of, guys aren't going to be comfortable of stealing bases until they know that they can get back without getting picked off and getting embarrassed, right? So if you're introducing stealing bases, I would introduce returning first, making guys comfortable getting back before you get comfortable moving forward.
Oh, so good. So good. Tyler, as always, appreciate you coming on, man. This has been a ton of fun. It's crazy. It's almost, we've always been on for an hour already, but I appreciate you, dude. This has been great. Where should people, if they want to follow you or have any questions, is there any place that they should would look at or go to?
Yeah, hit me up on Twitter. Twitter is the best place. I think as baseball coaches, it's our best resource to get some information and get some new ideas and stuff like that. So hit me up on Twitter.